Good day, everyone, especially to our instructor, Sir Stephen Carl Silagan. Good day, sir. Today, we will discuss the Chapter 7 about learners and other marginalized group. But before we will start our discussion, we would like to introduce ourselves first. By the way, I am Angelica B. Umpakan.
I am Nervin John C. Vicada.
I am Janice Arver Tudazo.
I am Joycelyn May Tejero Santa.
I am Ryan Sisuaso Jr.
I am Cheryl Gardon Sibunga.
I am May and Ross V. Suman.
I am Carl K. Jumelo Valenzuela.
Good day everyone, I am Nervin John C. Vicada from Group 4 and I am the first discussant in this video. I know you are eager to learn, so without further ado, let's begin. In this report, we will be discussing the meaning of marginalization, specifically in the area of education. We'll also discuss the different groups that are marginalized in society and in education. Moreover, we will also explore the process that could be used to justify issues of marginalization in class or school. There might be situations that we are not aware of that have marginalization issues. As students and as future teachers, being aware of this is important because through awareness, we can provide the appropriate response to the said situations. Hopefully, this chapter will help us with that. Now, let us proceed with our discussion. To begin our discussion, I was supposed to share with you a story that depicts the situation of majority of our indigenous children. But since the story is quite lengthy, I will instead let you read the story on your own. You can pause the video or take a screenshot if you want to read the full story. To summarize, the story is about Ika, an 8-year-old girl who belongs to an indigenous group. Her people has their own culture, language, and way of living, but since she wants to be educated, she goes to school that has a different culture than what they're used to. In the school, other students make fun of her for the way she looks and speaks. She also has a hard time learning in school because she finds that the things taught to her are vague and unfamiliar. In the end, Ika receives low grades because of her experiences in the school. Although it is a fictional story, it depicts the situation of majority of our indigenous children. They are treated as second-class citizens and have been pushed out of mainstream society. Furthermore, they are also challenged by a curriculum that has never considered them in the first place. They are being marginalized, being treated unfairly just because they come from a different culture. So that is what this part is about. In this part, we will be tackling marginalization in education. Marginalization can trace its roots to the theory of the marginal man. At first, it points out to the personality traits that arise when a person is placed in a marginal position among two different social environments. According to the analysis of Robert Park and Everett B. Stonequist, the marginal man is an individual who is born and raised in one culture and is being immersed in another persisting culture. So basically, this means that the individual or the marginal man is in a situation where he has to connect and interact with a different culture because of reasons such as schooling, immigration, etc. Because of the situation, Park even calls this individual as a cultural hybrid. So when we say cultural hybrid, it can be used to refer to someone who is trying to connect to a different culture but can't leave his old culture behind. It is like being a product of two cultures. A crisis experience becomes a personal concern when the individual is rejected. So in my personal interpretation, crisis experience happens when the individual who is trying to immerse himself into another culture is rejected by that said culture. According to Petkovska 2015, marginalization basically arises from culturally deeply embedded values, beliefs, standards, norms, and other factors which determine acceptability within a certain social frame. Since marginalization is a product of deeply embedded norms, it means that it happens even before children get into school. The United Nations Development Program of 1996, as cited in Miss U 2012, defines marginalization as the state of being considered unimportant, undesirable, unworthy, insignificant, and different, resulting in inequity, unfairness, deprivation, and enforced lack of access to mainstream power. So basically, marginalizing is when a person or a group is made less important and are pushed out of the picture. In its 2010 Global Monitoring Report, UNESCO stated that education plays a vital and decisive role in neutralizing the inequity and persisting illiteracy that encompass generations. However, education can also support prejudice and continue marginalization. Marginalization and education regulate recognition or acknowledgement of other people within a specific social standard. Okay, so marginalization in education comes from intense cultural beliefs, values, and typical norms that affect the school, meaning that there is a social standard based on what our culture perceives as normal. When people can reach that social standard, they are being acknowledged or they receive praise. But when people from other cultures cannot reach the standard or the norm in our culture, they're seen as unimportant and less. They're being marginalized. In schools, when children from other cultures cannot reach the social standard, or if they do not possess common knowledge about our culture, they get bullied and made fun of, just like what happened to Ika and her friends in the story. They also have difficulty in learning skills and concepts since lessons are taught in a way that is very unfamiliar to them. They are being treated differently, which can truly affect their education or how they learn in the school environment. According to the same report from UNESCO, those who are marginalized usually exhibit lower levels of educational attainment. Therefore, we can say that the highest form of marginalization is an insufficiency in the availability of education, meaning that the highest form of marginalization is when children are deprived of education that they deserve. Going further, Matthew 2012 discussed the issue about labeling, wherein a learner is categorized as belonging to a certain group depending on the learner's needs or challenges. This refers to children with special needs. Matthew emphasized that labeling is not the same as marginalizing. So what he is basically saying is categorizing people to belong in a certain group is not really marginalization. Because in some countries, labeling students as children with special needs meant supplemental resources, which is basically a good thing because it means that the learners will receive education that are tailored to them. In some countries, however, labeling would only have detrimental effects, which means it is a bad thing because it can become cause for bullying and discrimination for students. Not labeling students is also counterproductive. It is impractical because it means they will not be given any form of attention, be it positive or negative. If they do not get attention or importance, it would seem like they don't exist at all. They would be easily forgotten, which is not good. Because of this, we can say that marginalization can be interpreted differently by people who come from different backgrounds. It is better to see labeling as a progressive concept that can change between situations and times. In an earlier research, Matthew 2003 explored how marginalization is experienced by primary school students. He suggested that marginalization can be conceptualized in the following ways. Number 1, the child experiences some kind of marginalization that is recognized by almost everybody, including himself or herself. Number 2, the child feels that he or she is experiencing marginalization, whereas most of the others do not recognize this. Number 3, when a child is found in what appears to be marginalized situation but does not feel it or does not view it as marginalization. And number 4, when a child is experiencing marginalization but does not admit it. Matthew suggests that these perspectives of the students can be studied to identify marginalization in schools. As students and future teachers, it can help us be aware of marginalization and how to properly respond to it, which is important to end the issue. Lack of awareness would only make marginalization prevail. That would be all from my part. Let us now proceed to the next reporter.
Good day, everyone. My name is Janice Arver. I'm your next discussant, and today I will report or I will discuss about the marginalization and inclusion. According to Ms. Su, manifests how young people's voice can intensify system processes and experiences in congruent with inclusive education. Voice is clearly identified as one of the students' rights. It's meant having a say as well as referring to language and emotional components as well as nonverbal means that are used to express opinion. So it's simplified put it listening and paying attention to what the young people say and do not say. It means attending to the words, emotion, and behavior of young people and providing them with various opportunities to fully participate and collaborate with adults in education. Voice is clearly identified as one of the students' rights. Student voice is important for empowering and engaging students. So students need also support to learn how to use their voices. So whether to advocate for themselves, express their opinions, or stand up for their rights through their voices. So beside the impact of the students to empower students' voices, teachers can also learn a lot about students when students' voice is priority in classrooms. So it can be easy to make assumptions about students when they do what they are told without a chance to use their own voice. So opening up classroom practices to empower and amplify student voices is an incredibly effective way for teacher to get to know and better understand their students. In the book Confronting Marginalization in Education by Ms. 2012, the book focuses on all learners, including those who might experience marginalization but whose voices might have not previously been heard, relevant to teachers of pupils of all ages. Students on initial teacher educations and undergraduate and postgraduate students, this book will also be of interest of the researchers and academics who are focusing on the role of children's voices in promoting inclusive education. This is also a framework that focuses on the collaborative activity between young people and adults in education that promote inclusion. It also takes into considerations other factors that contextualize marginalization like the curriculum systems within the society or an effect of administrations of management of the everyday lives of teachers and young people in schools. This is a framework demonstrate a four-step cycle process that discussed by Miss Santa, the next reporter. And that's all for my report. Thank you and God bless us all.
So, four-step cyclical process. First, we have the opening doors. So, situating the students in the center of the process, various methods are used to allow them to express concerns. So, here, the students are respected as active participants. So, methods like drawing, role playing, doing interviews, and engaging with group activities are the ways to measure the social relationship. So that is opening the door. And we have the look closely. So in this stage of the process, the data gathered from the step 1 is meticulously examined to identify students who may be experiencing concerns that might lead to marginalization. So in this phase, the staff and members should gather and discuss the data gathered and the basic information that is challenging the students about their concern. So that is looking closely about the issues. And next we have the making sense of the evidence. So students are asked to think about their own experiences as well as what their classmates feel and experience. So it is the sharing of data with learners. It is during this time there is an explicit focus on the corners about marginalization that were gathered from the previous step. So that is making sense of the evidence that being gathered. Next, we have the dealing with marginalization. So in this phase, it spells out the response of the group and the concrete actions that will be taken to confront the issues and concerns. So during the phase again, collaboration between the adults and the students are important, and it assures the concerns of both adults and students concerned gets the attention. So that is dealing with marginalization.
So now we will discuss the different learners and marginalized groups.
So another type of learners in marginalized groups are indigenous people. Indigenous communities, people, and nations are those which having a historical continuity with pre-invasion and pre-colonial societies that develop on their territories, consider themselves distinct from other sectors of the societies. So we all know that there are many kinds of minorities and indigenous people in the world or in our country, but they all share the experience of frequent prejudice, marginalization, and exclusion. And when it comes to learners, children that belong to indigenous groups have unique social and cultural traits, right? They are also different in the way they live, which prevents them from keeping up with modernity. So due to their individuality and occasionally inability to fit into the school culture, individuals experience discrimination. Due to their prejudice and distinction they faced, it is notable that only a small number of indigenous children decided or opted to attend school and interact with other kids. This historical continuity may consist of the continuation for an extended period reaching into the present of one or more following factors. So we have here occupations of ancestral lands. These are lands belonging to indigenous people or community. We have here common ancestry with original occupants, culture, it can be specific or general, their language, their religion, or livelihood or whatsoever. So we have your language, residence, and other relevant factors. On an individual basis, an indigenous person is one who belongs to these indigenous populations through self-identification as indigenous, so group consciousness, and is recognized and accepted by this population as one of its members, acceptance by the group. So indigenous people generally shares a common sense of identity and common characteristics such as language, religion, tribe, race, or combination thereof. So what are the harsh encounters that most of our indigenous countrymen experience in a normal classroom setting? So I have here school as a venue of discrimination. Yes, that is the main concern because indigenous people, other kids or children see them as different because of their physical attributes, their culture, their or even their clothes. Next is prejudice, financial inadequacy, comprehension difficulties, or adjustment difficulties. So before I end my short discussion, so I will just share to you an example which contradicts to what other people perceive about indigenous people. So he is Norman King, the first Filipino Aita who finished his studies and graduated in one of the prestigious university in our country, UP Diliman. So regardless of his identity or his culture, so he was able to surpass all those challenges, all those hindrances that he faced during his school journey. What makes also unique during the ceremony, so he wear their tribal clothes or their dress codes to prove that regardless of his identity or culture or origin, so He's still human, and others should embrace diversity because that is the only way that we can go farther. So that's all. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. I am Gerald Bardon Sibunga, and this will be the continuation of the topic about indigenous people. So, again, indigenous peoples are distinct social and cultural groups that share collective ancestral ties to the lands and natural resources where they live, occupy, or from which they have been displaced. In the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of indigenous people are acknowledged to have suffered from historic injustices as a result of their colonization and disposition of their lands, territories, and resources, and this preventing them from exercising in particular their right to development in accordance with their own needs and interests. Indigenous people have suffered so much from the hands of humanity, and some of these committed human rights abuses are number one, marginalization. They are treated differently inside the society. Second, excessive poverty. They were subjected to discrimination and few opportunities for major economic activities, education, or political participation. Third is the absence or lack of quality education. Indigenous children are more likely to arrive at school hungry, ill, and tired. They are often bullied, and the use of corporal punishment is still widespread. Ethnic and cultural discrimination at schools are major obstacles to equal access of education. They also suffered poor health, unsanitary and poor living condition, and that's why they usually hide in the far-flung areas. Malnutrition, unemployment, and unequal opportunities for employment. Indigenous people cite a lack of jobs, education, training, and work experience as reasons for unemployment and expulsion from their lands for government purposes. And according to Mr. Shah Zukam, he said that even their languages, their value systems, culture, traditions, and their way of life is being continuously vulnerable to threats and destruction. In focusing on education, indigenous people generally lack access to education because they usually stay in places that are quite far from schools and also because of their marginalized status in the community. The curriculum of the school they get into, if there is a school available for their children to go to, is not adapted to their culture and language. And it is a big struggle to all indigenous people who are aiming for a quality education. Teachers are not trained to teach indigenous people. They do not speak their language and are unable to provide materials and activities that are relevant to the uniqueness of their culture. These consequences is called education gap. As a matter of fact, there are less indigenous students who enroll, more indigenous students who drop out and lower achievement outcomes than non-indigenous people. Another consequence is the destruction of their culture and the loss of their identity. This is brought about by an educational system that is foreign and that did not consider their culture in the first place. However, we should also remember that there are also a lot of indigenous people who have gone through formal schooling and have become progressive and helpful in uplifting the image of their indigenous community. Education gap can't bring the world to success. As a matter of fact, education is a right and means for self-improvement. Its terminal goal is a better life for the individual and his or her family. Quality education will eventually square to better lives for indigenous people. And the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People Note that quality education is significant for indigenous people and that they have the right to manage their own system of education wherein they are free to use their own languages. It is also a call to all people in the world that we should respect them together with their beliefs and cultures. They are human beings, and they make valuable contributions to the world's heritage thanks to their traditional knowledge and their understanding of ecosystem management. We have a lot of talents which we can put together in preserving the world we live in. May it be that we will give them the same level of love we gave to others. So that's all about my report. Thank you for listening and may God bless us all.
Good day, everyone. So, to continue about our discussion, I'm here to discuss about the abused children or the child abuse. So, according to the World Health Organization, or WHO, defines child maltreatment as the abuse and neglect that occurs to children under age years of 18, or those are the underage. So according to them, the child maltreatment is identified globally as a valid social, public health, and human rights issues. So it is a broad problem nowadays. So there are types of child abuse. First is the physical and emotional ill treatment. It is common nowadays, those children that we can see a lot of bruises. Next is sexual abuse, which this is very sad because one of the person that abuses them is only their family or their loved ones. Next is the neglect and negligence. These are the children which they don't receive the proper care or love from their family. Next, we have family or other people that they are in right now. Next, we have the commercial or other exploitation. Example of these, those are the sexual cybercrime. They expose the underage into different sexual webcam. Last one is the exposure to intimate partner violence. One of the violence that the World Health Organization defines as one of the child abuse. This is where both parents are fighting sexually and physical violence in front of their children, which is not right. So there are different types or the results for potential effects to the children because of child abuse. First is the child's health. It may affect their child, it might affect their health because of what they are experiencing. And then the development, because it is not a light that which you can switch it on and off as you want. No, because child abuse might affect their lifetime and their development. Next one is the survival. As children who are experiencing child abuse, they might feel like they have to survive by their own. Next is the development of trust issues or being powerless of their own. So child maltreatment or child abuse is a serious matter that has direct and extensive and lifetime effects on children. So as I said, it is not like you can snap it out and then you can change the children's perspective towards their life. No, because it will leave them a trauma for a lifetime. So it may lead to physical harm or impairments, negatively affect cognitive functioning. So instead of they are developing into their intelligence, they might that those experiences might lead into hindrances or yep. So next we have the socio-emotional adjustment. It will be hard for them to adjust because of their experiences, and it might lead into their deathbed because it will weaken their nervous system and immune system. So according to Fry et al. 2018 shows to their meta-analysis that all kinds of abuse and cruelty in childhood have an effect on educational outcomes, which include the school dropout or school graduation dropout. Next is the absence the academic achievement might go poorer or their learning outcomes, and other outcomes such as grade retention and then the remedial test. And so that ends for my session. And a piece of advice: if ever you witness child abuse or any kind of abuses, you have the responsibility to report it or do action to help our children escape on that certain situation, because it will not just affect their educational, but it is in all aspects, and as they grow it will might make them life suffer more. So I will now give the platform to the next reporter, and that's all. Thank you.
So again, good day everyone. I am Angelica Biumpakan, the next reporter. And today I will discuss to you the other type of learners and marginalized group, which is the refugees or displaced children. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees defined refugee as someone who has been forced to flee his or her country because of persecution, war, or violence. So the refugees are the people or a person who has been forced to leave or run away to their country in order to escape war, violence, persecution, or any disaster. A refugee has a well-founded fear of persecution for reasons of race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. Most likely, they cannot return home or are afraid to do so. War and ethnic, tribal, and religious violence are the leading causes of refugees fleeing their countries. So the war and ethnic, tribal, and religious violence are the leading causes why those refugees or the people fleeing to their country. So now I will discuss to you what is internally displaced person. So an internally displaced person or IDP is someone who has been forced to flee their home but never cross an international border. So these individuals seek safety anywhere they can find it, like in nearby towns, schools, settlements, internal camps, even in forests and fields. IDPs are the internally displaced persons, which include people displaced by internal strife and natural disasters, are the largest group that United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees assists. Unlike refugees, internally displaced persons are not protected by international law or eligible to receive many types of aid because they are legally under the protection of their own government. According to the most recent statistics from the United Nations, there are 21.3 million refugees and 51% are below 18 years of age. So far, this is the highest record since World War II. The refugees and internally displaced children have something in common. So first is they are not in their homes. The second one is they are not secure. Then the third one is there is also a big possibility that they could be or are separated from their families, friends, and community. Then the fourth one is they are lonely and feel they are treated unfairly. Then the fifth one is that they are in a situation that does not allow them to enjoy freedom of movement and also freedom to go to school. Then next is they are often mixed with people from different cultures and beliefs, and also they live in tents or desolate housing facilities that are boxed in by barbed wires or fences. And lastly, they are in distress, scared, and uncertain about what is going to happen to them, for how long, and what their future is going to be like. As of now, the present situation of these children is complicated and there are no answers to this problem yet. However, other questions are arising: who or what will they be in the future? Will they grow up to be a good citizens of their country? Or Will they be the next group of terrorists who will be the burden and a threat to the world? Concerns over what will become of these children should be enough to make us take a serious look at how we can make education work for them. So the Declaration of Human Rights and the Convention of Child's Rights and also the 2030 United Nations Agenda for Sustainable Development are the three that will help in make the education work for them. Now, I will discuss to you the Declaration of Human Rights and the Convention of Child's Rights. So, the Declaration of Human Rights and the Convention of Child's Rights emphasize that education is the right of every person, every child. This means that education policies are in place. The 2030 United Nations Agenda for Sustainable Development considers education as essential to the advancement of humankind. It is clearly stated that United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 4, which calls for ensuring inclusive and quality education for all and promoting lifelong learning. Its specific objectives include ensuring that all girls and boys have access to quality early childhood development, care, and pre-primary education so that they are ready for primary education. Eliminating gender disparities in education and ensuring equal access to all levels of education and vocational training for the vulnerable, including persons with disabilities, indigenous peoples, and children in presentation situation by 2030. Despite all this, in the resettlement areas or places these children are confined to, food and shelter are given priority over education. Aside from the lack of resources, there are other complications that are hindrances to the quality of education given to these children. So first is, countries that host them are unable to protect refugee rights to education simply because they themselves have a distinct system of education and vulnerable government and economic institutions. So the second one is, because of the length of time, refugees and displaced children are in resettlement and refugee areas, the educational resources given to them do not allow for quality education shifts to accommodate children, overtire the teachers, and shorten learning time. Then the third one is that language and the lack of materials is also a concern. Then the last one is that the children who have been exposed to war and violence demonstrate signs of psychosocial problems that are not addressed. So that's all my report. Miss Carol Valenzuela will be the next reporter.
Good day, everyone. I am Carl K. Jumelo Valenzuela. Allow me to continue the discussion. My topic is all about children in conflict zone. So what is children in conflict zones? Refers to war or political instability that disrupts essential services such as housing, transportation, communication, sanitation, water, and healthcare, which requires the response of people outside of the community affected. What are common countries in the world that belongs in conflict zones? So these are Syria to Yemen, from the Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, South Sudan to Myanmar. These countries committing atrocities with near total impunity, and it's only getting worse. Matapos natin alamin ang mga lugar na nabibilang sa sinasabing conflict zone, alam ko na merong mga tanong sa inyong isipan, tulad ng what are the experience of conflict to children in these countries? So, according to the UNICEF, children in conflict zone are being used as human shield, killed, maimed, or recruited to fight, rape, forced marriage, and abduction that become standard tactics in conflict. Pangalawang tanong na sumasagi sa inyong isipan tulad ng what the government intervention? Accordingly, There's a right of a children to protect them from harm. However, the government failed to do so due to the unresponsiveness of government at even at times connivance with the perpetrators that is causing the children harm. The UN or United Nations has identified 6 categories of human rights violation against children, known as the grave violation. This includes killing and maiming of children, abduction of children, recruitment or use of children as soldier, sexual violence against children, attacks against school or hospital, denial of humanitarian access. But despite of the loss, the number of children caught in conflict zone is still fought. In this present day demonstrate a total disregard for children and school. Children are constantly getting killed or lost their parents, family, have their poor health and mental state are under toxic stress. This causes both physical and psychological trauma that will have enduring effect. And aside from that, it says that maraming mga bata ay hindi nakapag-aral at low status ang enrollment sa mga lugar na yon. Because of that, children are the vulnerable victims of conflict.
So that's all our report. We hope you learned something. Thank you for listening and God bless us all.